Welcome to a really special episode of the Nero Show, featuring an in-person chat with the vegan cyclist, Tyler Pearce. In today's show, we're going to talk about why he has chosen gravel. He's going to rate some of his canyon bikes that he's ridden, how much is he making from YouTube, and why is he so sheepish about the ultra-distance nationals title. But we're going to start the chat with a discussion about the future of road racing in the US. What's wrong with bike racing in the US, Tyler? Seriously, like this is the narrative, isn't it? You hear it on all the comments that I've even a couple of races that I've done while I've been here. People seem to be giving out about it. You're in an interesting position because you were/are a road racer. You're going through this transition that I feel like so many people in this country are going through. What are the push and pull factors? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, so if you look at the forums or on Facebook and comments. Especially in NorCal, all the races are getting canceled because there's not enough people registered. And so there's very few races that you can even attend. As of where flashback 5 years ago, you could go to 5 different races in the same weekend in California. You know, there was a Saturday, Sunday race in SoCal, a Saturday, Sunday race NorCal, you know, and sometimes even there would be, anyways, there was so many options. And now, man, people just aren't signing up. They're not signing up early. And there's also not a lot of marketing. So, I mean, you could point to a lot of different reasons why road racing is dying. But I think one of the things, a lot of the promoters, it's very expensive. There's a lot of risk. There's not a whole lot of reward. Most promoters that come in and they're like, we're going to change up, you know, everything. We're going to make this great race. They do 1 year, they lose a ton of money and they don't come back. So then the promoters that you have that have everything ironed out and they know how to run a race, they're super old school. So if you don't have Facebook, how do you find out about racing in NorCal? You know, and that's, I don't know how else you would ever actually find out. If you're a new 18, 19, 20-year-old, and you're like, well, where's a good road race? You're not going to even have the ability to find out how to register, where to go, anything about it. But you go on YouTube, and what do you see? Floods of gravel races. So, you know, Unbound is marketing through influencers. BWR, I mean, all these things. So you just assume, well, that's the only thing that's out there. You don't actually know about San Ardo or the University Road Race or Copperopolis, which are all great, amazing races. But
so, from your perspective, though, as a rider, put the whole content stuff aside for a moment, right? So you're going through this position where you were racing bikes. I can see pictures around here of you racing crits and road races and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden the pictures start changing and you've got hydration packs on and all kinds of other bits and pieces. But from your perspective, just looking at it as a rider then, why are you moving across? It's not just because you know those races are on. I'm not talking about the wider population here. Why are you making that move?
One, I want to spend my time doing something that I know I'll be able to justify. And okay, where I'm at, it's 4 hours to a 60-minute crit. And if I get there and 9 people show up and 2 of them are insanely fast and they break away and in 5 minutes, I'm just rolling around in a car parking lot. That's an 8-hour drive. That's all this time. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I used to be able to justify that because the races were huge. There would be 100 people in a crit, and it was so exciting and fun. And but now it's just also I don't really have any avenue to win a P12 bike race because now that the size of the fields are so small. You have such a small group of people that are just wildly fit. And you're just like, well, okay, I can't even compete with these guys at all. And when you have a huge group dynamic, you can sort of hide, you can luck out in a break. You know, it's not always the strongest guy, but when it's a small field of 15 or 20, the strong guys are going to They're going to do well, you know? And so,
So hang on. This sounds like a roundabout way of saying that you're not racing the road races because they got too good. Like, it's too hard to get a result, and therefore, you know what? It's not my playing field anymore, so I'm going to try and find another avenue of this sport that potentially I can get a result in.
I would love to do more road racing. I always tell myself, like, oh, I'm going to do more. But then when I start looking into logistics of driving so far, I mean, if there was stuff close, like, I'd absolutely do that. But all the stuff that's close gets canceled. There's not enough people. Or, you know, it's just like, okay, I have to be so fit just to even not get dropped within the first little bit. So then, you know, timing wise, it's just like, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to go for a great training ride in Yosemite? Or do I want to have a good time? Or do I want to cash in all these, you know, chips to go? And so I did a road race this year, and it was like 100-mile road race, really rough roads and super heat. So I was like, oh, this is going to be like, this is kind of like a gravel race, right? The roads were really rough, and I went out there. I stayed the night. I brought 2 bikes. Like, I was all stoked. And then I dropped my GoPro immediately on like the parade to the start. And then I went back and grabbed it. We hit this little tiny climb, and then I never flat, but I got a small little leak. And then we got to the top of the climb, and I'm dropped in 5 minutes. And a bunch of people got flats, and a lot of people had issues. But then it was like, dude, I just did all this for 5 minutes of riding, and you can't enjoy the rest of your day. You don't just keep riding a shitty road course in the middle of nowhere. And with gravel, often you're in really amazing areas, and the field is 1,000 or more. And so then getting like, okay, I'm going to fix the flat. I'm going to fix my stuff, and I'm going to come back, and I'm still going to get 30th or 40th. Like, that feels like a good day. But in road racing, you're just done. You're done. And so I was like, man, that really sucked. And then I watched the whole race play out, and it was, I mean, I wish I was there. I wish I had stayed in the group.
Maybe the answer is like, it's not the answer, but like, road racing is hard, etc. But maybe it's just a sport for like younger people, like, essentially, in the sense that maybe us sitting here and complaining about road racing is just pathetic as like two old blokes trying to stay fit. Like, get over yourselves, guys. Like, yes, road racing is hard. Yes, you're probably going to get dropped by guys who are 18. Don't whinge that then there's something wrong with the sport. It's just you. Like, and now that's perfectly fine. You can move on and you've got all these other options now, like the gravel stuff, like the ultra stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, but I just think that it's accessibility. So, one, is it close to you? And a lot of people will scoff at an hour drive, right? And they're like, I'm not going to drive an hour. I'm like, bro, I got to drive 4 to 6 hours one way to go race. So if I want to race in LA, it's 6-7 hours. If I want to race up north, it's 4 hours. And so then when people are like, it's far away, it's an hour, like, dude, come on. And so then when those people aren't willing to drive, now your event doesn't really grow. And if there's 100 people in a field, that's so much fun, regardless of your result. But when there's 15 people, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to just, and then people don't register. So then they wait till the day of, because they're like, well, let me see how many people show up. Then the promoter just eats dicks, because it's like, dude, are we going to gamble that the day of we go from losing $5,000 to making $500? It's just difficult. I think the whole business model is really gnarly. And so like crit racing still seems to be doing okay. And SoCal, I mean, obviously it's kind of like the mecca down there, but like their fields are huge. The NCL, they're getting super investors, and they're trying to like change up how racing is done, and which I don't totally dig it as a viewer because it's really complicated. But I think as a racer, it would be really fun to not be like, well, I'm just going to sit on the back, or I got to make this Hail Mary move. Like, you get to have a victory for your team by getting points. Yeah. And so it's kind of a neat situation.
You know what blew my mind? I love that I'm talking as an expert, having done one road race in California. But what blew my mind was the teams here. And I wouldn't mind running this past you, all right? So, yeah, we got teams in Australia, et cetera, and especially at like the higher level, the national level of racing. But as you kind of drop down through the categories or you drop into the age group stuff, it disperses pretty quickly. And I would argue that you could do a masters or a lower category race in Australia, and the majority, I'd be pretty confident to say, would be not on teams, flying solo, okay? So my one road race experience, I think I was the only person in my 25-man race that wasn't on a team, which I ran a team for 7 years, so I'm not going to sit here and bemoan teams. They provide, especially for junior guys, et cetera, I'm not going to go into that kind of crap. But just the dynamic of racing and the way it changed that race, I think feeds a little bit into what you were saying about it being this, it's 5Ks of racing and then the guys go up the road and you can't chase and your day's over. Because the situation that I found was if a couple of these teams, and there were 3 major teams, had a rider in the move, every other person in that race was like, cool. Teammate up the road, man. Teammate up the road. I'm like, what are we going to do for the next 2.5 hours?
Well, so I think there's this narrative that was like shamed people for chasing their teammates. And that was rampant. Like, you could be literally on the very back of the pack. You're getting dropped and you're getting back on the pack. And it's like, bro, why are you chasing your teammates? And it's like, what? There's a move of 40 people going up the road. And it's like, yeah, but you should give them their, and it's like, okay. And so then I think a lot of people built this idea of like, well, I can't even try to make that move. And so then it gets really negative. The racing gets so negative. It's super hot. Everyone attacks, but then they shut it down immediately. It's like 5-10 seconds of going because nothing happens. And it's just that over and over and over until a small group goes up. And then, like you said, if there's 4 or 5 guys and teams represented, which I know in the tour, it's like, okay, but this is not the tour. You're out here spending your Saturday, and did you come and sign up to not race your bike? Like, that's what's so weird to me as like, I like to race. And one of the last road races I did, Snelling, which is like a really big race. And I made a move. All the teams were represented. I was so stoked. And then the Mike's Bikes guys were like, well, we're not going to pull because we have a sprinter in the field. So you're not going to chase a break because you got a guy in a break, but you're also not going to push the break because you got a guy in the field. Like, dude, what am I doing here? And so then you're trying to make your pulls. You're trying to race. And it's like, well, these are the tactics. I actually did a video one time and I got flamed on it because we got into a break and this guy just sat on the entire time. And he was like, well, I've got teammates in the field, so I don't need to pull. And it's like, but we're racing our bikes. So like, race your bike. You don't have to empty the tank on the front for us, but like, can we at least establish this break? And so it gets really negative. And then people are like, well, don't complain. That's tactics. Just be stronger. And it's like, yeah, but then that makes me not want to race my bike because it's like, oh, are we not racing today? We're just going to roll around. I'm going to watch a group of guys go off the front. No one's going to chase. So then the only way for me to do anything is to burn every match I have, to chase every single thing. And then when I do make that break, no one wants to work in the break. So, but that's NorCal racing in my opinion. when I raced SoCal stuff, the racing is so fast that the crits, at least, they're like 28 to 30 mile an hour crits, that you don't really have those surges, and it's really hard to get off the front at that speed. And so then what actually ends up happening is it's way safer, even though you're going way faster and everyone's so close. The difference, the discrepancy in speed isn't there. So you don't have someone coming at 32 miles an hour off the side of the group while someone's pulling off at 15. And then it feels like you're racing because you're going hard, you're going fast, and the teams like Legion and a couple other teams, like they're not going to just sit up on the front and let some guy roll off, even if they have someone up the front. I mean, they're not like actively on the gas, but they are not sitting up, not pedaling, and just.
My whole thing with this is there's nuance to tactics, okay? And again, ran a race team for 7 years. We were very big about tactics. Tactics is an important part of bike racing. In fact, it's almost one of the reasons I would defend a team, in the sense that it is really good for people to learn about real bike racing tactics. Now, that is more than just, I got a teammate up the road, I'm not chasing. That is like kindergarten, okay? Elementary school tactics. There is so much more to bike racing. I can give you so many really cool examples of races that we did where we had guys in the move, and in fact, I tell a great story about Jesse being in a move, and we brought him back. Our team brought him back because we thought the way that the guys that he was with, we didn't trust Jesse in that particular circumstance. We brought him back. I won't go into the big details, but we won the race. In fact, we went 1-2. It was kind of one of the highlights of my whole time with Nero. So my point, though, is that there is nuance to this, and it's not good enough to just play kindergarten tactics, especially when you have such numerical advantage. It's probably not the right word, but it's the kind of thing that there is so much more we can do in the race to make this interesting.
Well, I really fell in love with tactics. When I first started racing, like, I thought it was so fun. Justin Williams said this, like, you're playing chess at whatever, 30 miles an hour. That is so fun, to be racing your bike, trying to stay clear, understand who's in the race, when people are going. It's so fun. But when you repeatedly come to the chessboard with your chess set and people are playing Connect 4 or tic-tac-toe, you're like, wait, I thought I was playing this game. And then they get mad at you for playing chess. You know what I mean? And it's like, wait, you're going to yell at me? And I had that experience so many times, no matter what I did. I'm in the group. I have a teammate up the road. People yell at me for not racing, not bringing that move back. I get up the road. People in the break are like, well, I'm not going to pull because I got someone back there. And it's just like, what? And then I try to play those games, and I'm like, okay, well, if you guys are going to play these games, and when I get into a break, I'm not going to pull, but then no one pulls. So then we just get brought back. And so what I guess the idea is that unless you're a pure sprinter or an absolute, you're way stronger than anyone, you can just ride away. It's very hard to have any sort of success.
Hard.
Which I love about bike racing, because the one time you do somewhat get near the podium, like, it feels really, really good because of how hard it is. But when you are an overall, rounder type rider, unless you have a solid team and you guys are racing as a team, it's just doesn't become that fun. So when you do gravel stuff, now your skill set, you can apply in many different avenues. And, you can be a better bike handler. There's all these different things that become apparent. Like, okay, I can play chess now, and it's just sort of me. Even, I'm sure teams will get into gravel racing, but right now it's just the team tactics don't really apply because it's so hard and it's.
I want to go down that route because I'm really glad you said in the beginning that you fell in love. Like one of the reasons you fell in with road racing was because of the chess, the tactics. And I kind of had this link that was like, okay, well, that's almost one of my pushbacks to gravel is I feel I would miss that. I love that element of, is that the move I should be in? Oh, God, is he the guy? I thought he was the guy I should be going. Yep, I'm going to jump across. Everyone's gassed right now. Okay, I'm going to hit them here and bring this guy with, like, I love that. That's, as one of that pack fodder people that you were just talking about, that's my avenue to anything in these races. And I feel like I would replace that. If I'm doing gravel, I would replace that with kind of logistic success, being like, I got the right tires on today. I fixed my mechanical better than anyone. Like, do you know what I mean?
100%. It's different tactics. Like, did you pre-ride the course? Do you know the course? You know, did you bring the right equipment? And a lot of those things, like, did you burn yourself up on a section that you didn't need to? And, you know, it's like slower chess or like premeditated chess, like a card game almost, like Magic the Gathering. So nerd, but like, did you bring the right deck to play? Because if you brought a road bike and it's a mountain bike race, you know, you just don't even have the cards to play that. I would say that at the end of the day, you had a very good day on the bike. But the level of talent in gravel right now is insane. Because we used to have this driver of the kids in America, all they wanted to do is get to Europe. And so then they went through these programs, you know, these development programs, and then didn't really have a whole lot of success. I mean, America, you know, hasn't done a whole lot. Even though we have these really, really strong riders, they go and they just get used up over, you know, in World Tour. They don't make a whole lot of money. And like Matteo Jorgensen, he said he's racing like the USA National Championships or something, but he is, since being a World Tour, he's actually never raced in America. He's only raced like World Tour. He did Unbound once, but like, it's crazy to have this guy who is almost winning stages on the tour, and he's actually never really raced here at home. And so with gravel racing, how cool is it that you get to be home and race here? And you don't have a huge team where all the budget just gets spread across all these people. Like if you're going over to Europe, you have staff of 30. Here with gravel, just you. So if you can go and get your own sponsors, I mean, there's guys getting 25th. Look at me, dude. I'm DNFing Unbound, and I probably made more money, you know what I mean, that on that one day being, you know, an influencer or whatever, than most other bike racers have made their whole year for road, right? And so then you have guys like Keegan, and I mean, he's just insane right now, but he's making really, really good money. And so then that's also the thing is that now we're developing kids. They're not looking at Europe. They're looking at Unbound and BWR and Leadville. And so now they're training all the bikes. Like there is almost no such thing as a road rider anymore or a mountain bike rider. You just ride it all. And so then now it's not just like, oh, well, this guy's got power, but he can't descend. It's like, well, he's a world-class mountain biker, world-class, you know, endurance athlete. He's a world-class like sprinter. He's a world-class climber. It's like,
it's escalated so quickly. Like we were talking about this the other day. Like, no offense, but like it wasn't that long ago. You were a legit chance to podium Unbound. Sorry to say, that day's passed. And not only has that day passed, like those boys and girls now are, yeah, as you said, like they're fully elite level athletes. And this has all happened in the space of what's the time frame here? Like when you came into gravel and you were...
So I want to say Ted King won Unbound in 2018. And so he's like a retired bike racer, came over, won, and that sort of like set his career. He's like, it rebirthed his career as like, oh, he's winning these races. But at that time, you have mostly just like local Joes or whatever. I mean, it's a tough race, but like no one's coming in that prepared. So Ted King wins. And then I think every year after that, it's just like more and more people went, well, I think I could win. And then because he got paid money and he kind of built a brand out of it, then you had more ex-pros being like, well, I'll go do that. Then you had this like wave of ex-pros come in, like Stetina and Lachlan Morton and a couple other guys. And it's like they had a little bit of success, like a small window. But now you have actual prime bike racers. Not you were amazing at one time and now you're trying to like have this new kick of your career. But you have guys that are 20, 21, you peak, and they are training specifically for this, and they are geeking out on all the equipment.
What's that meant to you? What's that meant to your the what am I going to call you? The advanced middle ground, basically.
Oh, for me, I'm smoked because like before it was cool that you could line up with these ex-World Tour guys, these amazing, riders, and sort of play with them for a little bit. And, in Texas in 2021, maybe, I got 9th, and like 8th through 1st was all well-recognized names. And I was like, dude, that's so cool. But now there's just no way. And I actually got a comment. Someone said, for all the training you do, you should be winning races by 30 minutes. This was at the Colorado race I did. And I said, I mean, I understand what you're thinking here, but to win that race by 30 minutes, Vanderpool couldn't do that. These guys are insanely fast. Like they'll put an hour on me in 1 hour somehow, right? I'm like, I've been riding for an hour and somehow they're an hour up the road. It's like, this just doesn't make any sense. These guys are, and this is what they do for a living. They're doing altitude camps because the money is good enough where, dude, you could be a top 30, top 40 rider and be making like 50 to 100 grand a year through sponsors. So then they have no obligations, no real responsibilities. So they're just like, if you follow gravel privateers, dude, they don't have a home. They're just like living wherever they want to live, out of a van or out of someone's house. And it's just like, they're living this amazing life as a bike racer, getting to travel the country. Dylan Johnson, for him, it's so unfortunate because he was like 2 years late. Because right now he is flying. If he had the same mindset, you just shift it 2-3 years previous, dude, he would have won Unbound and BWR and all this stuff. Like he would just crush. But now he got 16th at Leadville, and that's like he had best his time. I mean, he couldn't have gone any faster. So then, like, so now gravel, I think, is in a issue, a problem where we have so much talent, but no way to tell that story. So filming it's very, very difficult. So we can't really make this into a legitimate sport until we film it like they do the tour. Once that happens, then I think now you can start making like amateur divisions. And Lifetime's kind of doing that. They're sort of doing age group. They're starting them differently. And so I'm excited about that. I don't want to race against Keegan. Give me the 30 to plus, give me the amateur, so that I can try to get a result. And even then it's going to be difficult.
So the content thing's interesting, right? I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of where I feel you step in, really, because I think Jesse made this comment. It was like gravel content was like invented for you, like the style of stuff that you do. So when you started getting into the gravel scene, obviously the content that you create seems to fit the narrative of that style of racing. It's a little bit more ad hoc. It's, you don't really know what's going to happen. You don't really know where the course is going to take you. And so the story that you tell is kind of fluid, for want of a better term. So I don't know, I suppose my question's a pretty broad one, but in terms of gravel content, like it feels like it came along at a perfect time for you.
Well, I mean, I dig it, but it's hard to get people invested when it's like, so here I am racing for 55th, right? Like that doesn't, and so you can, but have you ever looked back at your GoPro footage from a 100-mile road race and there is zero action? You're just in the group. It's just asses everywhere. And then you've recorded the whole thing. And there was like, well, there was a move and I didn't get it. And so then there's no story there. There's no content. And so gravel, I think regardless of how you do, you can tell a good story. The visuals are cool. It's pretty gnarly regardless. And then you can be in a battle to the death for 55th. Like that can actually feel kind of important. I think that once someone figures out how to really capture the front of the race and to show the dynamics, because no one knows what the front of that group is like. None of those guys, like the top 10, they're not running GoPros because they like that. Not aero, it's too heavy, whatever. They're not trying to turn it on and off. Like this is their job. So then you don't really get that insight. Like Keegan goes and breaks the Leadville record. I mean, puts in this heroic ride, and there's just one photo of him at the finish. Like there's no content about it. I feel like he could be the Vanderpool of America if there was more content around it. But there's just no way to, like, what do you have? Like a motorcycle following him on the single track with a guy like bouncing? Like, it's just, what do you do? And so then do you have a drone? Do you have like follow drones? But then
there was one shot I did see where they tried to have a guy on an e-bike following up. I think it was like Columbine, wherever one of the last big climbs are. And the guy on the e-bike's like, he's going full gas trying to actually keep up with the guy. So it was like, it all worked well. It was a good theory, but in practice, the guy on the e-bike actually probably needs to be like a Cat 1 rider anyway, just to stay up there with him. But in terms of like your sponsors, how much do they value the gravel content? Like, are they, I'm sure you have like agreements or something with your sponsors. Are they saying, look, Tyler, we want you to push more into the off-road stuff because that's your go, or are you still given a pretty free rein?
I mean, it's just about what value you provide. And so obviously there's more brands targeting gravel or all road. So there's more allocated towards that, and then there's more people getting into that sport. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to show off your brand new road tires and road bike and road helmet, but 20,000 people are going to see this video, and out of that, 500 of them are even interested in getting into road. It just like kind of dwindles down. As of where gravel, you might get 100,000 views or 200,000 views, and a lot of those views are people that are like, yeah, I do that. Because not a lot of people do road racing in the P12 level. So they're like, well, I don't really need what you have because I'll never do that. But I will ride the same course you just did. And so then, they kind of feel like, well, it isn't that what like influencing is about, or like sponsorships is, buy this Trek and you'll be just like Lance Armstrong. But that's not totally how it is anymore with road. But with gravel, it's like, well, I do need the right tire. Right now, the top guys, they're making a decent living. But could you imagine if Keegan, this sounds douchey, but made a video about Leadville at the quality that I could do? Like he has a GoPro in his mouth and he's getting all the shots. And then halfway through, he flips the GoPro around and says, I'm going solo. And then is telling the camera, like, and then has graphics on it that's saying, like, how far up on the course record he is. And then he takes the camera home with him and shows his dinner and talk. Like, dude, it would be amazing. And I know that's why I have, like, the living I have is because I'm able to do that. But I wish that the kind of content that I create could be at the very front of some of these huge races. And it would be so exciting, and it would build the community of cycling, I think, more here in America. And so, yeah, I mean, if once we get these guys to make more content, because they always just have a filmer, but is there a way we can have GoPros on their bikes, like the top 10 have a front and rear, and do like a battery pack? Like, I mean, yes, it's going to be heavier, but dude, if we had 6 hours of footage from the all top 10 guys, then someone like GCN could come in and stitch all that together and make like a really captivating race out of it.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Your own content, YouTube, been pretty good to you?
It's been crazy, the journey of this, you know, but also like how much I've tried to, I don't want to say innovate, but like I have not done the same thing my whole YouTube career. Like, I started in one genre and just kept moving to new genres to try to keep it interesting. And that what's been really cool is that's like pushed me into a whole new level of humanity. Like, doing some of this stuff, dude, as a Cat 3 road racer, you know, like right here, I'm in Spain and this woman's just staring at me, right? Like that's so far from what I thought could ever be the case. But if you just keep trying to make new content and tell new stories, you go down this path where, you know, you start doing things that are way outside your comfort zone. And that's a good story. I'm caked. Like, that was miserable. But the whole time I'm thinking, this is going to be such a good shot. And so then I'm having so much fun capturing all this crazy stories. But at a certain point, where do you go from there? Like, it's just an escalator to space. And I, you know, heading to Bolivia in 2 days to go up to 18,200 feet. It's like the highest accessible point by bike. Once we do that, what else are we literally can't go any higher. You know, I'm going to put my bike on my back and go up to Everest just to like it. And then the harder the thing gets, it doesn't scale in the way this story is told. So, you know, how do you tell someone what it feels like at 18,000 feet? Like, it doesn't look cold, doesn't look hot. There's no way to see elevation, right? And so then how do you keep telling these stories? And it's difficult. I'm finding it difficult to continue to tell captivating stories. But with that said, I just posted a video about Colorado, and a lot of the comments were like, I like this better than your impossible routes because this is just fun and light, and it's you know, you're making jokes, and it's like, I want to see more of this. But to me, it's like, well, how many times can I do kind of the same exact thing over and over and over again? But if you want YouTube success, you kind of have to do that. But I don't want to do that. So like with you switched from sort of because like for a while, I felt like you didn't know who you were on YouTube. Like, you just were seeing what other people were doing and kind of trying to replicate that with sort of your own style. But there wasn't, you know, we had to talk about this last year. Like, there wasn't a reason I had to watch one of your videos. If it was on, it was cool, whatever. I mean, it was good production. You're putting a lot of energy into it, but there wasn't this thing where like, I gotta watch this. And you floundered for like years. And I even said like, dude, it's so wild because for the most part with business, just keep doing what you're doing and you'll have success. But your channel views never grew. And it's like, well, I don't understand what's happening. Like, this seems so weird. Your content's better. You're telling good stories, but yeah. So then you had to make a decision of like, well, what am I supposed to do here? And then you made this total pivot into a different direction, but now you're providing value with like the podcast and the way you edit. And it's sort of like, there's now a real reason and value to watch what you're doing. And you found that through...
I found that through a long chat with you. I'm not going to turn this into a Tyler Pearce loving, but yeah, I mean, I've been pretty open about this in the past that, you know, you were very bullishly positive, but in a sort of critical way, which is the kick up the arse I needed. And look, there's a whole other backstory to why YouTube was YouTube for me. It was never a priority. It was just a thing that ran in the background. The priority was obviously the team sort of stuff, and it treaded water. I would argue that I wasn't telling great stories. It was a very... If I felt like making a video that was related to something, I'd do it, and there was no other plan. And you could sense that. You could sense that in the stuff I was doing. There was a couple of good bits and pieces in there for sure, but it wasn't really until... Yeah, there was a lot of push factors from the team, obviously financially, the shit show that ended up. And your words ringing in my ears of just being like, no, you're not bad at this. Like, just friggin' concentrate on it.
Yeah, but it's like your same amount, maybe even that you're working less hard, but just in a different way. And then it had a lot of success. And so it's really cool to see, but like that's what you got to sort of find your niche and find your thing. And I think, unfortunately for me, is that my thing is so physically taxing, right? Like I saw a thing where like, okay, well, I'm going to do something that no one else wants to do. No one else can do. No one else can film it the way, like there's no competition in the space that I'm in because no one wants to be there. Right. And so it's neat, but man, it gets really, really difficult. And so then I'm sort of at crossroads of like, well, how many impossible routes can I really do? Because now it's sort of like it's the same story over and over and over. I can't race at the front of gravel races because who can, right? Like when people are like, dude, you're not very good, you suck. And it's like, okay, but who doesn't suck? Who isn't? Like Keegan wins everything, okay? And there's like, maybe 3 or 4 people that are winning the races. Everyone else. So, I mean, okay. So then, unless there's like a bigger amateur division that opens up in gravel, but then it's sort of like, well, wait, you're kind of a full-time bike racer. I mean, this is sort of, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a bike racer, but this is sort of my job, is making content. I get to ride bikes a lot. And then it's like, so, but you're just like sandbagging? You're not racing like the pros? Okay, yeah, but the pros are super pro now. And so
they're professional athletes. You're a professional content creator. It's very different.
Yeah. So then I almost feel like I might revert back a little bit towards the lighter content, like reviews, but in a better way. Like I want to do like helmet shootouts, talk about like 15 different helmets or glasses or do something where I can offer some expertise. Because like before when I did that, I didn't have enough history in the sport to really give any context. Like I was just talking out my ass. But now I feel like I have a good level of experience to be able to explain why someone would want to run a 1x over a 2x, or just like, I don't need to like get all into this is what I promote, but I can explain the differences and the experience that I've had, and maybe turn back towards like information that people want value of.
All right. Well, let's test you then. All right. So the lineup of Canyon bikes that you've ridden in the last 4 or 5 years. So what have we got? We started with the Ultimate Rim Brake, I think. Yep. Thoughts, impressions on that? Carry that through. So that versus maybe your Aeroad, your current Aeroad. versus the new little rig that you've been running around the last few weeks? Like, what are you seeing in those three? Like, what's your favorite bike?
Well, it's hard to say because like I ride them all, and so then this is where I think I've always wanted to do this, but like if you had one bike, what bike would that be? And I wanted to do like all these tests where I did the same course, but on every bike, like a time trial bike all the way down to a full suspension downhill. And like, they would be kind of cool because like you'd be doing a single track on a time trial bike, but, and then I think it's no surprise it would fall into some sort of all road, have like a gravel frame and 2 sets of wheels. I think for the most people, like that's just going to be totally fine. And I know people want to talk about these super bikes and how awesome they are, and they're great, but the margins are so small. And so what do you want to get like the experience of enjoying bikes? To me is almost a mountain bike, but with drop bars and like it's light and it's performance-y, because then you can do so much. And I know that you're not totally in the gravel scene. I don't, maybe a lot of the gravel roads where you're, maybe they're just they're not accessible. But if I had a week with you to take you on some adventures, I think it would just change how you look at riding altogether, and how fun it is to never see a car, to see places that no one often sees. You're just in the woods, and it's so cool. It's so fun. So like, anyways, the bike that I would promote is like a $3,000 to $4,000 gravel bike and have 2 sets of wheels. So you could have a road set and a knobby. Because I've gotten to ride every one of the bikes.
You jumped on the Ultimate that you have.
Yeah.
That's Shimano. So you're like a week into riding a bit of Shimano. And how it's been like 4 or 5 years?
So I have all my special snowflake stuff because I want a bike to be unique. And I don't know why everyone's so like, I'm not going to upgrade my bike. It's going to come out of the box and I'm going to leave it that way. I'm just going to replace the parts. But my bikes are like Frankenstein bikes. Like I have a mountain bike derailleur on my Aero Road. I have a 1x54 to 1152. And then people are just like, stupid. It's so dumb. But one, I love it. I love how simple the SRAM 1x is. It's click down on the left side, click up on the right side. That's it. I also just like not having to think about, shifting the front derailleur and cross chaining and all that. It's just like, like a fixie. Have you ridden fixies? There's a sense of, a whole different sense of freedom that you don't have to think about brakes or shifting or anything. I mean, the bike is like trying to actively kill you all the time, but it's actually a really cool feeling when you strip away a lot of those things you're thinking about. And so then, so we got this new bike out of the box. I think it's like an $11,000 bike on their website. And I just didn't have time to put all my stuff because I can't swap it out like it is because of the Shimano thing. So my impressions are that the shifting works well, but not any way different than SRAM, really. Like I wouldn't say, oh my God, this shift's so amazing. I will say that my unfamiliarity with it causes a lot of dislike.
You said that on that first ride. You were like, what's this hand doing over here?
Well, I kept shifting the big ring on accident, and that's just like whatever. But then the right side, it's like the same button. And so then I kept shifting down and up instead of down. And then that was like whatever. And then now you have to start thinking about the big ring. So when you're doing like undulating hills, now you got to be in the right gear and then downshift and then you spin.
I will argue, like, because you're running a super silly, it's like a 50-34 front chainring, like it's tiny. I would argue that if you move, because I'm running the 5440 and a 1134 on the back, it's much better for that, because climbing, you are staying pretty much in the 40 front tooth, and you've got all this room to move at the back up to a 30. Because I noticed that yesterday when you were like putting the power down, coming up that second last climb, and you were kind of getting out of the saddle and you were pretty low on the block, and you're like, and I was looking at it going, he's either going to shift again and it's going to be a sloppy change, so I'm going to back off you a bit, or you're going to realize it and put it in the big ring, and there'll be that moment where you try and get over the gear kind of thing. That, and meanwhile, I'm just sitting in the 40, like going, I'm not moving from here. I'm pretty comfortable. So again, it's learnings thing. Interesting to see though that you didn't have any, even the brakes. You didn't find the brake modulation happy either way. No, okay.
I like what I like, dude. I like oval. I like one by. I will say though, it feels super efficient. So maybe my one by setup, I don't know, it's a brand new bike, so like every bearing, chain, everything is like, maybe it's just gonna feel that way. But the bike feels really, really good. Very snappy and quick, but I just like, also then with SRAM, if for whatever reason, like you could bring a spare battery, you can't with Shimano. I don't like the plug-in thing. Like SRAM, especially adventure stuff, I just have an extra SRAM battery with me, so in case something happens and one dies. But Shimano, if you die,
I feel like that's where you'll eventually always just go back to SRAM, because the once you start getting into the off-road, the compatibility stuff that you've worked up over years, that you're not going to back out of that. You're so far down that ecosystem now to have this other bike. I mean, the performance of the Shimano road bike would have to probably be so much better than you've ever had on a SRAM bike for you to make that leap. It's like you're not going to buy an Android phone just for your really important calls. Like,
well, and that's what I guess I don't understand. It's like what? So one, I can't have the gear range that I want with this setup, because you run a 5440, but what's in your rear?
1134.
And the derailleur gets that 34. Yeah.
It's actually the gear ratio I've been dreaming about. Like for where I live, and I was slightly concerned coming here running that bigger front chainring, but I've had no problems. Now I haven't tried to go up Big Creek. Geez, this is niche conversation. But yeah, I haven't gone up like the horrific stuff around here, which I may need to change out of, but yeah.
Okay, but so that right there is, if you have an issue at all, the one by setup that I have fixes all of it, because I can run a 52 in the rear and an 11. So then, and even if I think you could even go, a SRAM has like a 1052, I believe. But either way, like I can climb up walls and I can still run a crit without having to think about it and change it at all.
But I live so much more, like the 54 where I live at home, I am allowed to ride so much more of my life in a more efficient part of the cassette. And so, yeah, the extreme trade-off of coming here is sort of the 10%.
So what do you think about this place? You obviously don't like the heat, and you've been coming here for a while, but like you've done a bunch of the normal roads. Like I took you up Bayshore, Yosemite. You did the Lodge Road and Alder and that sort of stuff. How do the roads here compare to?
It's sick. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like the variation in terrain is wild. Like there's nothing like being able to climb up to like spaceship moonscape areas like we did the other day, and then the one thing that I thought this place was missing was like a bit of competitive edge, a bit of like the fast group ridey stuff. But you linked me up with the guys here, the Velo Kings guys, Mark, and like you got that as well. So that's that pumpkin spice, whatever we call it, right? Pumpkin Valley Death Ride. Yeah, I mean, I love that.
Which that course really, like, it's very hard to get away. No matter how strong you think you are, you know, it's fun. I wish that we had more. I wish we had more people, you know, making it harder. But I think a lot of times people don't even think about the Central Valley as a destination whatsoever. But dude, the riding here is just phenomenal. Like, how often can you find, like, we have beyond category climbs out my door everywhere. You could do like 15 of them.
So YouTube's been pretty good to you, but like, how do you, I would say you're probably one of the top cycling YouTubers in the world. Like, how does that work financially for you?
Which is crazy because I don't really make anything off YouTube, dude. Like, the ad revenue is just peanuts. And I've said this somewhere before, but someone said, so like, you make around what, like 20 grand a month off ad revenue? I was like, bro, I wouldn't be talking to you if I was making 20 grand a month off ad revenue, man. Like, I'd just be in Hawaii. Like, I'd have already retired. And I know that you make more than I do. Charles makes the most out of anyone with like such a small following. So it kind of depends on how you structure it. And unfortunately, I do high quality content not very often, and YouTube does not like that. And so there's just no money in YouTube unless I am going to upload every single day. And when I do that, because I've done that in December, the last 3 years, my views just tailor off all throughout the whole year. It's like the first one is good. It's like 60,000. By the last one, it's 20,000. And I'm putting in an insane amount of work, but I haven't built that thing where people want to watch me every day. They want to just watch this like really high, good production, like every once in a while. So then I don't make anything off YouTube. My range is between $700 a month up to like $3,000 a month. Like $3,000 would be like a really, really good month. And people were like, "Oh, you're making $3,000 off video, bro." When you break it down by hourly wage, I'm making 14 cents an hour. So, you know, so then I have to find a different way to do that. And the other way is to do ad reads. And there's a very well paved path there now where a lot of brands, you'll get in with these like media companies and they represent like a ton of different companies, and it's an algorithm. Your last 5 videos have gotten this many, so here's what we'll pay you to have this ad read in the first, 30 of your video. And I think with podcasts or just like talking heads, very applicable. You could say, I really do like Ride Bikes clothing, and this hat is amazing. It's cyan blue. Get more. Code whatever. Back to this. That doesn't really interrupt. You're just like, whatever, okay. But when I have crafted this story of me, Jeremiah, and Andrew going through Washington, and we're about to go camping, and it's just like this build of emotion, I can't, right then when the emotion is high, take you away. Because then you might not come back. It's going to ruin the way you feel. And to me, I think what I have this like weird sense of what the story feels like. So I think a lot of times people, when they make content, they just want to see themselves. And they're like, well, if my face is here, it's great, it's amazing. But I have an ability to separate myself, and I look at me as a character, and I'm an editor. And that person on the screen is totally not me. So I can make myself look stupid, because if that's funny and it lends to the story, whatever. I don't care showing me fail, because that's a good story. But so I can't interrupt myself with these ad reads. And even if I did do them, they don't pay that much. So then that means that you still have to make a ton of videos. So then I have like salary. And I have gotten myself into probably one of the most sought after ways to make money in this industry is you just pay me monthly or quarterly, and I'm just going to do what I'm doing.
So an ambassador type
Yeah.
thing with a brand. Okay.
But like not, hey, you got to do this, this, and this. And it's just, as long as you keep making the content the way you're doing it, we will support that. And I have like a handful of companies that have been with me for a long time. But man, if I lost even one of them, it's like my annual income is like across like 4 sources. And so one of those leaving is a big deal. And then how do you replace it? And yeah. So it's been good, but I'm like on this downstream where I'm not making more money, but I'm expected to make better content, which costs more money and is more time. And so, not to like complain, but like try to find how do I find a way to have a revenue source that doesn't require me to put in 200 hours into a video.
How does the impossible route fit into that? Because obviously it ends up on your channel. So it's, I don't know how the whole sort of system of it works, but I assume that this is potentially outside those agreements that you, because it's a huge expense, I'd imagine.
So what I've tried to do is separate Ride Bikes Racing, the Vegan Cyclist, and Impossible Route. Those are 3 different brands. And because a lot of times a brand's like, well, we'll give you support, but we want to be in the Impossible Route. And it's like, but that's a totally different thing. And so I try to separate that a little bit. But the Impossible Route runs on its own sponsorships, and I should have put that on its own channel from jump. I think that the Impossible Route might be further along if that had happened. But obviously, like, I didn't know. And then you don't want to put all this time. Like the very first one I did, Death Valley, Hawaii was the first one, but the first one we got contracted for, we had gotten about 110 grand to make 4 episodes. If I put this on its own channel and it gets 700 views, that is an uncomfortable conversation to the people that put that money in.
It was safer, really.
Well, it was, I could guarantee some level of success. So I put it on my own channel, and we got 110 grand to do 4 episodes. Now, that might sound insane. If we had taken that whole budget and done a split payroll between Jeremiah and I, that would still be undervaluing our time. But we didn't get any of that money. All that money went into travel and videographers, all the hard things. Like my RV in Death Valley got completely destroyed. There was like a $3,000 fuel bill. I mean, it's just insane. France cost us $45,000. That's just hard costs. So then, how do we start making money? And Outside TV has bought season 1 and season 2. Not like for a crazy amount of money, but that was beyond the budget. So that's what Jeremiah and I have split. And so Jeremiah and I have made maybe 15 grand a year.
How many a year do you do?
Season 1 was 4, season 2 was 4, season 3, probably going to be 3. It's so much. It's so difficult.
Such a small budget. Like, if you'd gone to Netflix or something and said, right, in fact, I'm sure you've tried this, but you go to Netflix and say, well, hey, look at this movie that I've made. How much, here's the budget that we had for that. They would laugh at you, given, I'm sure, the scale of the budget that they would normally work with.
Which I feel like is a huge selling point, but I can't. Why can't a media house go, wait, we've been spending millions per piece of content, and this guy did it for 20 grand, 30 grand, and it's better than what.
This is why we needed Unchained. I said this the other day. This is why we needed Unchained to be a success. All of us did. Because, you could then go to Netflix and be like, do you remember that 25 million you spent on that cycling documentary that ranked number 3 across the globe? Well, I do this shit, and here's what it costs. They would be friggin' bending over at that point. Anyway, side rant.
No, I mean, it's like, how can I get the same kind of money that other people are getting? I mean, I've some of the like Rafa, EF Education Rafa videos, I mean, they were like 100 grand a pop. I've talked to other filmmakers in the space. They'd have had $250,000 to $500,000 budgets to make a film that never streamed. It was just the film festivals. And so 100 people saw this. How do I get into a situation where someone's willing to spend that kind of money, make that a kind of investment? But I think that I haven't done a good job of like putting a barrier on the content. So it's been so accessible, and which is cool, but like, that's not where the money is. The money is putting a paywall or making it like you have to go here to see it, which I pitched to Outside. I said like, dude, let's just make it exclusive on Outside. But man, some of these big companies, it's just, there's so much red tape to jump through. And I don't know. I don't know what it is when someone sees these and go, wow, this is amazing. Why is there not the next step of going, okay, we'll throw a bunch of money at you? Which, whatever. Look, to me, money's not that big of a deal. Like, the experience that I've had doing this stuff is so amazing. And maybe if I had gotten a bunch of money, then it would change the content. Like, could you imagine getting a couple $1 million and putting together something that sucked? Like, what kind of anxiety you would have at night? Like, so I have pretty low pressure. I mean, I feel like I perform really well with the stuff, but yeah. I mean, it's been really good for Canyon and any brand that's been a part of it. But it's such a niche thing where we're taking a quarter, if not half, of the North American Canyon marketing budget. That's a lot. So should I have gotten into a different sport that's more mainstream, and then we could get like a little bit of Honda, Ford, Jeep, whatever?
Yes is the answer. We all are in completely the wrong spot. Those motorbikes you've got outside, like, there's a lot more money spinning around in that stuff. So where are you headed next? I know you mentioned that, but what is the next impossible route?
We've already actually did one that's I haven't even started editing, which is we did Belgian Waffle. We raced Belgian Waffle, then we rode our bikes up the coast to Sea Otter. It was like 700 and something miles in 7 days. It was awesome. That's kind of episode 1 of season 3, but we hadn't gotten funding for it, so we sort of just did something low cost. And anyways, so then this one, we're going to La Paz, Bolivia. And we're going to ride the Death Road. That's like this trade route over the Andes.
Okay, the Death Ride. Good.
Death Road has no guardrails. It's like if you just look it up, it's insane. And then there's a ski resort, an abandoned ski resort or ski lift off this gravel road that goes up to 18,200 feet. So it's like the highest accessible point in the world by bike. I mean, I guess you could put your bike on your back and climb higher, but like to ride along this route, it's like one of the highest towns in the world, or is the highest town in the world, like at like 16,500 feet or 17,000. I mean, these people just live there. And so, yeah, it's going to be a 3-day ride, and like each day has 20,000 to 25,000 feet of climbing in it. But the elevation is just
mate.
It's going to be insane.
Help me out. Help me out for that.
And that's when we did Colorado. We did all the peaks in Telluride, and that was between 8 and 13,000. And that was by far the hardest impossible route I had done.
Because that's my favorite. That's interesting you said that.
Oh.
That's actually my favorite, like, movie / whatever.
It came out, it was beautiful. It came out good, but it was physically the most difficult because you can't negotiate with elevation. You can't just say, hey man, suck it up, be tough. Your body just, and then I've never been past 14. So I have no idea what's going to happen.
Insert footage of Chris looking out yesterday here. You can't cheat elevation. You're riding these impossible routes, bulk distance, bulk time in the saddle, etc., etc. And I get the sense that you sort of realized you're not half bad at this, just sitting on a saddle for days and days and days. Enter the ultra stuff. Now, I'm really interested about this because I'm gonna challenge you on it, all right? From an outsider looking in, the achievements are, in terms of the pure difficulty of everything, seem incredible. But there's this big but behind it. Probably sounds a bit odd, but you know what I mean. But the competition, let's face it, is pretty damn small, mate. Right? So how are you... Because I think about this, I'm like, you are pushing yourself to the ends of the earth in terms of your athletic ability to beat one other guy?
This most recent one was super frustrating because there was 10 people registered. There was a bunch of heat. One guy showed up. But I'm already there. I've already put in all the money. Like, this is in a performance contract. Like, I can't not do this. But now how prestigious is this? Is this even a race? Or is this just like an adventure? And it's really, I don't know where that sits with me right now. Because like when I did it the first time, I kind of came to the start line being like, as long as I don't crash, like the competition here is just years. It's as if you started gravel racing in 2014, but with today's knowledge, you would just dominate because you're kind of ahead of the time. That's how it is with ultra road, is that most of these people and most of the events, they're more towards your casual rider that's looking for a really big life achievement. And so they're showing up not to race. Racing isn't, they wouldn't even call it a race. It's just they're going to try to do something really cool for themselves. So a lot of times it's like baggy jerseys and clapped out road bikes. And then I show up on two $10,000 speed machines, you know, like skin suit, like dialed team. I mean, I am just the douchiest of douches. Now, if I didn't win, we'd have a real big problem. Okay. But so, I really fight between, okay, yes, the competition isn't very stout. And, that doesn't make it feel very prestigious. And like, yes, are there other guys that could blow me out of the water? Sure. But did they show up? They did not. And so, and it's not like a crit where if you show up to crit national championships and one other guy is there, like, okay, what is happening? Because you're definitely going to finish. But to do 502 miles and 38,000 feet of climbing in 110 degree weather, it doesn't matter how fit you are or whatever. Like, there's so many variables. And just finishing it is very, very difficult to do. But I don't want to be the ultra distance national champion who finished the race. Like, I want to race. And that's what I like about the 24-hour to 36-hour window. Because then, like, okay, I could go do Brest Paris or whatever, or like there's a couple other Badlands, Tour Divide. I mean, there's other things, Race Across America. But these are all like 2,000 plus miles. And that gets into a totally different sport where they're like, well, you say you're the ultra distance. Why aren't you doing Tour Divide? Well, dude, Tour Divide's like 10 days, fully self-supported, and you need to learn how to like cook. Yeah, it's a totally different thing. And And to me, that's not a whole lot of fun because it's not a race anymore. I mean, in the way of like, are you going fast? You can't. It's like, who can be bored the longest?
It's who can avoid sleep the longest. Those events have turned into just pure sleep deprivation. Who's not going to lie down? Like, whereas, you're still operating, I think, in that window of like athletic achievement rather than.
Yeah. So in Oregon, I did raw average 240 watts for 17 hours, the first 17 hours. Like that was, and the time trial bike actually was like glitching out with the power meter. So it kept cutting out. So maybe even did more, but, that to me was fun. Like we are on the gas. If you're doing something 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, you just can't be on the gas. And so then the sleep thing, like, where is this on healthy? And someone had commented, and they were like, on the Oregon thing, they're like, this isn't healthy. Well, 32 hours, I mean, you wouldn't want to do that all the time. But I felt like I actually improved my physical form after that race. Like my body soaked in that stress. You go and you do an 8-day race, and like the guy who won Badlands, I think his ride time was like 104 hours, and he slept for 2 hours. That is bad for your brain. And so unless we're going to start saying, okay, let's just do all the drugs and let's do some meth and stay up, and be just like our testosterone's through the roof so that we can, okay, that would make that healthier, I guess. But then like long term, like how bad is that on your body? And what does that do with your genetics when you're just, yeah. So anyway.
So my take on this is I hate the narrative of, oh, well, he won, but so-and-so didn't turn up. I hate that. We used to get it in the team, oh, this team weren't there, no wonder Nero won. It just used to drive me nuts because half the battle is being on the start line. And, that is essentially a part of the race. So with your event, I don't have any issue with, not that you should care, but like, I don't have any issue with the no people turning up. For your own motivation, it must be just a total mind wreck when you're out there, like, because obviously you need, you're going to be thinking about stuff for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of the thing, like if you're in a bike race, that great motivation comes from looking over your shoulder and being, where is he? Where is he? So it's almost kind of adds to the achievement from my perspective about what you're doing. And then, but I do think what will happen, right? I absolutely swear by this. Few people are going to see your video and they're going to go, you know what? Fuck that Tyler bloke. I'm going to turn up next year and I am going to whip his ass. And all of a sudden, we're going to have a race.
Look, which I was all for. So people, if you don't know me, then you just assume I'm going to be this like narcissistic hype man that only wants to make myself look good, regardless. Like I want to fake it, which on social media, obviously, dude, there's so much faking. That is so opposite of me that I would much rather get 100th out of 10,000 than win with one other person. Because to me, I want to know where I really stack up. I come from motocross where a podium is 3, not 15. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I understand the extended podiums of 5 is whatever, sometimes 6, but I want to race. I want to feel that race, regardless if I win or lose. So when people see that, they're like, he just wants to have this like clout. But obviously I want some level of success. And I've been trying every single discipline of cycling. And so then I find this thing. And so the first one, I honestly thought, okay, this is going to get a bunch of people to do this event, to do this style of racing. And I had a bunch of people comment and tag and say like, oh, I'm taking this championship next year. This isn't hard. I'm coming. And I was welcoming it. There was a 22-year-old kid who had kept posting like that I'm holding on to his jersey. And I was like, bro, this is sick. I would love for you to show up. Didn't show up. Now, there is this level of like, it is the most elitism discipline of cycling because money offers so much. Now, when you are 28 hours into the ride, it's 3 a.m, and you're shitting blood. Who cares about what bikes you have and what crew you have? Like it's like gnarly. But the guy that I was racing against in Oregon had a station wagon, 1 bike, his wife, and his 2 kids. That was his crew. That was his setup. I had a absolute speed machine for a time trial bike, the lightest road bike I could possibly have, skin suit, and a crew of people that are so well oiled that I was getting bottle hand ups. We had a $250,000 Sprinter van that had all the I had every possible thing that I needed. And so all I had to do was think about just ride my bike. This other guy had so many other things to worry about and then got lost. So, I mean, he did, like I had a team that's like able to help me out so much. So then if you want to compete in open ultra, which it's a really, I want to try to explain how fucking cool this sport is. When do you get to race side by side with your friends and family? Like, you don't ever have friends come. Would you ever have a friend come watch you at a road race? Like, you're never even going to ask someone. You're yeah, okay? And if you ask your family, that's a big ask. Hey, can you watch me come through the feed zone twice in 4 hours? And so there's no feeling of like when you win, they weren't on your bike with you. But in ultra, that's how it is. And it's something that hasn't been documented well enough, but your crew and you have this bond where it's like, I'm just an extension of this team. And like without the right crew, you're not winning. And so that feeling of like, I'm racing with my wife, like she's out the window, you know what I mean? She's doing the social. She's like in my ear on the radios. Like that is absolutely something that you don't get anywhere else. And it's so cool. So then when I get done with this, me and my wife's relationship is so much stronger because we did a thing together. And now she's getting to see what it is that I spend all my time doing. And then she gets like so soccer mom about it, where my wife's just so gentle and so sweet. But then she's like, you're 20 minutes down off the record. What are you doing? Like, go harder. And then like it's 24 hours in and I'm like, hey, I just need to sit down. And she's like, no, like keep going. And it's like, but she's like, so gets in the moment of like, no, we're winning this together. And that's what's so cool. But like leaning into it was something I really battled with. Do I even say I won a national championship? Because what is a national championship? Right? And then I really fell down this like rabbit hole of like having a championship is just a bunch of people agreeing that this one event is special. Right? And then we're going to give you something special. And you can kind of see it in the gravel scene where like 3 different places were called the Worlds. But like, is this the World Championship?
So who sanctions the ultras? Is it
WUCA.
Okay.
So World Ultra Cycling Association, which they are, to their credit, have like really tried to increase their prestige. So they've been doing a lot. They do a lot in Europe. So in America, it's like there's all this drama between WUCA and RAM. Race Across America wants to be the Iron Man of America, but they don't care about championships. They don't care about racing at all. They're very just like, pay us money to ride your bike on a course that's not marked or anything. Like it's such a good deal. Ride across America by yourself, self-supported with your team, spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do this, and then just give us a cut of it. WUCA is a little more like proper racing. And so it's sanctioned through them. And technically I'm the North American champion because they have the North America and then they have the Europe. So it's funny because it's like stars and stripes, but
how do the Canadians feel about that?
Or Mexico, like whatever. But it's just, it's a sport I hope that gets bigger. I hope that people get more involved with it. But again, often you need multiple bikes. You need a solid crew. Sometimes you need multiple vehicles to leapfrog. And but man, I want to see 15, 20, 30, 100 people show up. That would be so amazing. I would love to get smashed and embarrassed because I know that then that was where I really stacked up.
I understand. Yeah, you're a racer at the end of the day. I don't think, and there's you feel more. You gain more from competition a lot of the time than just pure achievement.
The competition is what I strive for. On Wednesday, we did this right. I got 4th out of 4, right? I mean, there was a couple other guys, but like immediately first lap, like it's us 4. And I had more fun doing that than I have had almost all year. Just because there was real competition. We were battling.
Just bashing each other.
Yeah. And it was so fun. So I don't care to win, but like I feel that I have a gift for ultra in 24 to 36 hours. I feel like I can put out a lot of power for 24 hours. I feel like I naturally have a hard time sleeping, and so like night riding to me is great. I love it. And everything I've ever done that I've won has been 12 plus hours. I guess climb to Kaiser was 8, but like most of the stuff, it's all overnight, through the night, that sort of thing. But I tattooed it on my arm.
Yeah, wow.
So I have these bands on my arm, and they're moments in my life that have forked my life in a different direction. So I have the Hawaii Impossible route, which took me from just a casual rider to doing something no one else had ever done before, and that was like an addictive feeling. Then I did Death Valley, which 7 days of 12 hours a day of riding is just like unbelievable. Then the film, and I broke my leg in a Taco Bell parking lot, like totally different life path. And so then when I did this in Nevada, I was like, do I even wear the jersey? Do I even say it? And my thought process on it was like, I'm gonna embrace this in hopes that it makes me an athlete. Right? Like, if I don't say I won a national championship, then in my head, I'm not really a national champion. And then like, maybe I don't, like, I was hoping I was going to take this next leap from just content creator who rides bikes to actually an athlete. And, I don't know. What do you think? Cause you guys were talking shit when we rode on Saturday, if I was going to come rolling up in the jersey or not. And so do I get to wear it? Is it douchey to wear it? Would you wear it?
No. Oh, it's a cool jersey though. I'm actually looking at it behind you at the moment. I wouldn't race in it. I wouldn't go and race a crit in it. I wouldn't go and do a road race in the Stars and Stripes.
Well, you can't. You technically can't. You know what I mean? So if you're going by road race rules, or like the unwritten rules, I can only wear it in 500 plus mile races, which I do one of those a year, which is national championships. Like, I'm not going to do multiple 500 mile races. Like, it's just like, that's too much. And so it's kind of like,
Look, my whole thing with this is like, it's so easy to give you shit for this. It's like the easiest, it's like the low hanging fruit to give you shit. But I don't want to go do this. You took me on a bike ride the other day. I softed out after like 5 or 6 hours. I don't want to do this. I'm bored with this. Like, and so to take that to the next step and be like, yeah, you're going to go put me on an ultra distance bike ride, I'm completely out. So ultimately, I would love to see you racing. That's the only thing. I mean, the achievement, the athletic achievement about it is bloody amazing. But it's that really annoying thing that there's just not people turning up to race you.
And when they do, they don't inspire confidence.
Yes.
You know, that's like
there's no fear.
Yeah. And yeah. So
you mentioned just quickly, obviously having your family out on the road with you during that. It's pretty obvious from anyone who follows you on any kind of social media that it plays a big role in your whole life, of course, obviously. But I mean, have you struggled with it a little bit in terms of like how much the family should be involved in the social media stuff, or like is it still a big inspiration for you?
Yeah, so the family balance is, a question I always get. And so okay, in 2021, or right after COVID, I made more money than I had ever made. The brand deals were just, I literally thought people were making typos. I'm like, there's no possible way that this is real. And I ended up becoming the unhappiest I had ever been, which is such a cliche thing to say. Like, I made a bunch of money and I was sad. But I was working too much. I was spending too much time away from the family. And what I did was I justified, well, babe, you're cashing the checks. You're living a great life. Like, we should all be happy that I'm working so hard to provide this way. But then I just wasn't around enough. And then my wife had told me one time, I said, I was gone for a big trip and I came back and I was like searching for compliments. And I said, like, so how stoked are you to have me home? And she was like, well, to be honest, it's not really any different than when you're not here. I was like, ooh, burn. And so then towards the end of last year, my daughter's like 5, and that period in her life is so golden. Like my son, the more he gets older, the more he ages, the better a relationship becomes. But with her, I feel like, dude, I'll never be able to buy this time back. And so anyways, going into Ultra Distance Nationals 2022, I had asked my wife, because I was at like probably the lowest point of our relationship we had been at in 18 years, where I felt like we were roommates. She was totally living a life unattached to me, and it sucked. So then I said, I want you to come and be a part of this. And when I say, hey, can you come be a part of a 30-hour bike race? No, no one wants to do that. And I kind of had to convince her a little bit, and she wasn't thinking it was going to be very fun. But that event with her by my side totally changed our relationship. She saw what it was that I was doing and how cool it was. And she kind of became like a part of the team, literally became a part of the team. But when we won together, she felt like, we did this thing together. And shortly after, our relationship had just like spiked in just like how connected we were. And I really thought like, oh my God, like this is how our relationship should be every day. And so then I was like, I want to put more time into this. I want to make sure that I have a wife for the rest of my life. And I felt way more happiness around that, even though that event, I didn't get paid. Like I didn't really have any sponsors for it. Like we spent a lot of money to do that, but I was so much happier. So then this year in 2023, I've worked very little. I haven't traveled a whole lot, and I have just been full gas with the family and putting so much time into my daughter and my son and my wife. And even though I've made probably the least amount of money that I have done in the last 5 years, and the stress and anxiety of like the warehouse and the business and the content is maximum, it doesn't feel stressful because I have this support crew, or like, how do I say it? Like, the things you can't measure are all time. My relationship with my wife, my marriage with my wife could not be better, but you can't really measure that. I can't say, well, my marriage FTP is 420, but if I could, the measurement of that is off the charts. My relationship with my daughter, relationship with my son, like, it's just, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. Like, I put on some weight, which feels really good. My wife, like, she's like, oh, you've kind of like beefed up and I like it. You don't feel so scrawny. And so everything I can't measure is the best it's ever been. And all the things I can measure are probably the worst it's been, but it doesn't feel bad. So I don't have the right vocabulary to say that when things suck, as long as you have the things that matter, then that sort of overrides it. It overrides those feelings. But no matter how things are going well, when the things that you can't buy, like you can't buy love, you can't buy respect, you can't buy health, when those things are out of whack, it doesn't matter how much money you're bringing in. It doesn't matter how many views you're getting or what other people are saying online. Like, what does your wife think of you? What do your kids think of you? And when they respect you and they look up to you, dude, that feeling is worth an infinite amount of money.
Did you ever have a conversation with your wife where, so if you'd gone away and you came back to the house, and it felt like you were not an imposter, but you didn't know where to fit back into, because since you'd been gone, they'd fitted into their own routine. Like, everyone had their own sort of dynamic to how dinner was happening, how the morning routine was happening, the washing was happening, just boring old day-to-day stuff. They'd figured out their own logistics, right? Then insert you back into this, okay? And then you all of a sudden are like, you're not sure where you should slot back in again. So it's like, well, is this kind of my responsibility here? And I can remember a similar type thing, being away a lot and the rest of it, and Elizabeth sort of saying something along the lines of, you know what, it's actually easier when you're not here. Because and I could totally understand it, because I'm now trying to like force my way in. I'm like, oh, Dad's home, oh, here I am, I'm Dad. And it doesn't work like that, because they're already got their routines. And the only way around it is time, and then all of a sudden you are in the flow of it and you're in that natural thing. And I couldn't agree more about the golden time with like the kids at that age. Like, I wouldn't give that up for absolutely anything.
Yeah, your daughters are right, like peak, right? I mean, you maybe have another 2 years before they start getting super sassy. And then maybe another 2 years after that to where they're like full-on teenagers. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'll move here. That point. Yeah,
that's going to be rough. But yeah, I mean, I think with bike racing or just bikes in general, the amount of time you spend away from your family is so normalized, right? Like, we did a 6-hour ride yesterday, which I don't know if you looked at the stats, but dude, we averaged like 17 miles an hour. I know, like, take out the stops, like if you just total elapsed time or whatever, but I mean, dude,
I'm pretty fucked right now.
103 miles, 11,000 feet of climbing at elevation, and we did it in under 6 hours. Like, pretty good. But anyways, 6 hours, and we cut it short. And now you don't necessarily do a lot of that, but like,
I cut it short because I missed my family.
Yeah. There was a huge storm. We're glad we cut it short. But like, if I was by myself, I probably would have rode for 10 hours And that's just so much time. But that to me is like normal. There's no other sport. You wouldn't be like, hey, honey, I'm going to go play golf. Well, maybe golf, but like really, you're not going to spend that kind of time away. But okay, say you do golf. You're going to tell your wife every day, hey, I'm going to golf. You just golfed. Yeah, I know, but I got to golf again. Okay, but you've golfed 8 times in a row. Yeah, but like I'm on a pro. You see my training peaks? Like, and so, it's difficult to balance all that.
You mentioned obviously trying to spend more time with the family, that kind of thing. This clothing line, this sort of stuff. I mean, obviously, this is potentially you trying to find, another outlet, obviously another revenue source. Like, how are you making this work? Like,
yeah, so creator-led brands, if you want to get real technical about it, are very, very popular. The business model between you having a merch to sell as a creator, I mean, some of the bigger creators have done millions of dollars. I can't remember the guy's name, but they did a limited release, and he said, I listened to him on a podcast. He bought every black hoodie in America. Every black hoodie out of stock in America, and they sold it all. And he did something like 27 million in a week. Now, I'm not anywhere near that, but there's a definite business model to owning your own thing. And so this brand has actually been around for like almost 6 years, because I didn't want to sell vegan Cyclist merch because that's a double niche, and how many people, even if they support me, want to wear that. So then how about we do something that goes beyond me, something that is like, well, everyone can identify with, which is just ride bikes. Like if you ride a cruiser or a mountain bike or a BMX, like who cares? It's open-ended. And when I met my wife, we started a motorcycle shop together. So that's how our relationship started, was us working side by side every day for 3 years. And so then we kind of went our separate ways career-wise. Like she raised our kids and did, that's what she's really good at. And now we sort of come back, and I said like, hey, I need you to help me take this to the next level. And so we got a warehouse about 10-minute drive from our home. She works next to me, placing orders and doing lots of stuff. That's been so cool to have like a routine and a place to go. Because for a long time, I was just working out of my house. And another thing is that I worked so much because I could. Like after dinner, if I didn't want to wrestle with my daughter or help my son with schoolwork, I could be like, well, I gotta go to my office and work. And so that was sort of like an escape from responsibilities. And then I kind of abused that a bit. And so I got more done, and I'd work like till 2, 3 in the morning. But now I don't have a computer in my house. I actually physically cannot work. I have to come here. And it's made this place such a great escape to where, okay, here I'm working, and when I'm out the door, I get to be a human. I get to focus just on the family or whatever. Even just riding. Like when you work and ride and do everything in the same place, it just, and so, yeah, this has been amazing. Now, we did pull investment. That was super, super scary. So I've got 2 people that put not a crazy amount of money when you really think about it, but more money than I had. And so now, and one of them's actually a YouTube creator. And so actively sees what I'm doing. One investor's like very hands off, like doesn't know who I am, whatever. But the other one is watches me, and so it's like, okay, he knows what I'm doing. He sees what I'm doing. And, I have to come back to them on reports and be like, yeah, I mean, the business model said this, but we did these backpacks and we sold like 2 of them, but we bought like 1,000 of them. And, that's kind of uncomfortable. But it's just been cool. I hope that we can keep growing it. But also then that comes back down to content of like, I need to make more content. I need more access points to drive people to the clothing. and I just don't make content enough. So I need to make more content. But then I want to make good content. I want to make really good stories, but that takes so much time to do. So where do you see me as a total, like, be a complete outsider?
Psychoanalysis, well, you've lost the plot. Yeah. In terms of
just like the whole growth, like, do you see, oh yeah, those impossible routes were cool, but I couldn't really get through the 5th one you did because it's kind of the same thing, or yeah, you got a clothing company, but like, I wouldn't personally buy that. You know, like, what is, like, how do you, and I don't want you to like just rip my life apart, but like, how do you see me as a brand versus how you know me as a person?
I think I've said this to you before. Like, I still feel like the biggest value add you have to any of the content you create is a unique story. You do have a really good way of telling a story. It doesn't really matter, from what I can gather, it doesn't really matter what the event is. It can be a gravel race, it can be a crit, it can be just a random ride into Yosemite. There's enough there. There's always a narrative to it that pulls you in. As far as all the other aspects to it, I think this is proper like analysis. I think the impossible route, as good as it is, suffers from being where it is on your channel. I think it's a really valuable commodity that potentially does live on a Netflix or something like that. But I think we were talking about this the other day. All that growth, it requires another person. It requires someone who's savvy in that game, who's willing to go into the Netflix boardrooms and have those discussions and sell you, because that's probably not what you're good at, you know? And to dot the I's of the contract and ensure that's all in place. And that's going to be probably the biggest roadblock, I would imagine, to get that into the next level. I really like the brand. I think the clothing's kind of cool. I think the look of it's pretty good. I don't know. Like, you kind of asked me sort of, what do I think? I mean, you are exactly who you are. I think that's ultimately something that pretty much everyone says. Yesterday we were on that ride, and you know, you have a lot of people come up and recognize you and say, VC, love your content and all the rest of it. And this was she was a park ranger. Now, she would have been, I'm going to potentially say, in her late 60s, maybe 70. Like, and she's like, oh, VC, I love your content. And I just went, what the my mind was blown by that. Like, how that was. And you were starting to ask her a little bit like, oh, what do you like, or this kind of thing, because I was fascinated by what was she pulling from your Unbound video. Like, that all of a sudden kind of ripped me in, and that, I think, ultimately is probably the biggest thing that you have and why your audience is so big, is because I don't think I was going to ask you this question. Like, who is your audience? I don't know. And that's probably a really good thing.
Well, you can dive into the analytics and see who makes up most of your audience. And I've always looked at the analytics, and it shows like 2% are 60 plus. And I always think, really? Or is that someone like, But then, yeah, yesterday, having this park ranger who says she rides the trainer and watches my videos, and she's like almost 70, it was just unbelievable.
But she made a comment. She was like, what did she say?
Well, she said, I really like that you incorporate philosophy into your videos. So she's like, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons on like how to just keep pushing, how to keep riding, how to keep pedaling. So it's beyond a story, beyond just cool graphics, but like I explain how I'm getting myself through that situation. And she said that she gained a lot of value from it, which was just, yeah, it was just wild, because you Yeah. But very, very cool. And she said that, I was like, what made you want to be a park ranger? Because here's the other thing is that when I meet people, I don't ever think of anyone as a fan. Like that's just weird to me. And so I just want to now get on the same level of them. Like they know a lot about me. How can I know a lot about you? How can I make this organic versus just, yes, you enjoy me. Thanks. Goodbye. And so I started asking her a lot of questions. And she said that she's a park ranger. This is her 8th season. She was about to retire. And then she said, like, I want to have some fun before I'm dead. I want to enjoy what I do. And then being a park ranger in Yosemite for an 8th season is like, can't really beat that. Like, that's so cool.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Thanks for sitting down today. Thanks for dishing it out to me yesterday.
Even with dishing it out, I was looking back at your GoPro footage, man. I went as hard as I could to drop you. And you said you weren't feeling good or whatever, but you never went away.
Oh, I wasn't going to be dropped. like, I can feel bad, but like, I'm not letting that footage ever surface. So don't worry about that.
I really thought like, okay, I'm going to get him, but
that was good.
I couldn't. It was amazing. It's been really cool riding with you. I mean, I say this in joking, whenever I post about you, but I say I like you. I like you as a human. I enjoy riding with you, and that's rare. It's rare to find someone that, because cycling is so wide ranged that you could like someone on the bike, but they're in like a totally different demographic, and they're just not compatible with you off the bike. And so, is there someone that you want to ride with and hang out with? That which is weird, but because you hang out so much on the bike,
And, I don't have any friends in Australia either, so it makes it easy. I can actually talk to someone.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Much appreciated. Obviously, you don't need me to put links of your stuff down below, but I will do that. Good luck in Bolivia. Let's hope you don't get freaking... Anyway, I won't even say it. All right. Thanks again, mate.
Thank you.